Normally I would play some license-free music behind me, but I have neither the time to track that down, nor the effort to keep finding different sources of this music because YouTube gets increasingly annoying. I'm now going to take off Hazel's jingly collar because as soon as I started talking, she decided to start walking around. Hi, Hazel. Okie dokie. Hi. I am delving into the end times, which a lot of people have already done, but I haven't. So I'm giving you my thoughts as I go along. Hopefully you find some of them entertaining. This isn't going to be a great instructional video. Think of it like a Cliff Notes version of what happened with some jokes along the way. This book took a turn. So we already read The Return of the Gash, and that was fine. I had minor issues with it, but it was fine overall. Enjoyed the read. The Fall of Altdorf is the next book, and it starts good. It starts good. So here's the thing: is people give the end times a lot of shit. So I was ready to be mad at it. I'm not. If you've watched this channel, you know I am ready to dump on anything at the drop of a hat. But honestly, 3/4 of the way through the Fall of Altdorf, I'm like, man, there's not a lot I hate about this. I'm gonna have to make a pretty limp video, but don't worry. The last 25% saved everything. So let's get into it. Fall of Altdorf starts in the north near Hefingen. It doesn't matter. It's not going to exist for very long. And the Imperial Army sets up. They have like this mass arrayed army that's apparently the best they could bring to bear versus the forces of chaos that are coming out. Now, I'm going to get this complaint out of the way right away. And then I won't complain about it every time it comes up in the books because it's all over the place. And it is just a Warhammer complaint in general. And I will acknowledge that this is a stylistic complaint, meaning some people enjoy stories this way and others don't. I am just saying my piece that I don't enjoy them. But if you do enjoy them, this isn't an actual, this is poorly written because of blank. It is a stylistic choice I don't enjoy. And that is numbers don't matter at all. And it bothers me. As a person, I usually like to read tight nation-state stories about populations and like the trials they go through and how the world affects the nation and how the nation evolves one way or the other to deal with the stressful environment they find themselves in. Those are the kind of books I generally enjoy reading. Warhammer, 40k, fantasy, Age of Sigmar, or otherwise, is not that kind of story. There are as many of blank as there needs to be to have the epic fight scene. And I acknowledge that, and that's fine writing if you just enjoy fight scenes. These are great fight scene books. But I will still acknowledge that it bothers me that it is just Nurgle followers fighting in the north against all of the Empire. And they feed themselves into this blender, and it's like, okay, I know in the Chaos Wastes, all sorts of Chaos Warriors are constantly killing each other to get status, and honestly food, because there's not a lot of food up there, so to stay alive, there's a lot of cannibalism going on. So when you have an army that outnumbers the Empire like 100 to 1, I have questions. But like, again, there's my complaint about it. I will then leave it alone for the rest of this video and carry on. But I still don't think, and to you people who go like, well, there's kind of like a little adage about how time travel is a thing in Chaos, and that's how there's Marauders, because it's every Marauder that has ever existed comes out at one point. And I would say, if you have to resort to area-specific time travel to get the army as large as you want it to be, I'm still calling bullshit. Anyway. So, the Empire, with Karl Franz at its head, is trying to hold off this impossibly large Nurgle force, and they do a really good job of it. Again, the fight, what this book is about the fights, and the fight is really well written. Lots of blocks of halberdiers try and hold the line. Oh god, Hazel's barking. Anyway, lots of lines of halberdiers try to hold the line. There's some pretty decent military tactics. You know, heavy cavalry going on the flanks, artillery holding off the main line. You see some of your heroes do epic stuff. It's good. It's a good fight. I have no issues with it, really, outside of, like, logistics. And then at one point, Kurt Helborg, a very famous captain of the Reichsguard, goes for a soiree out into the field to push back the demonic lines and buy the Empire a bit of a reprieve. He overextends and happens upon a summoning of a Great Unclean One. Great Unclean One pops up. smacks the Reichsguard around a bit, breaks their charge, and Kurt Helborg is about to die when Karl Franz takes to the skies on Deathclaw, dives in, and one-shots the Great Unclean One in a pretty good moment of badassery. Good job, Franz. Franz is then like, yeah, who's next? I can take on anybody. And a Nurgle-cursed vampire lord of the Blood Dragon line comes out of the skies on a chaos zombie Nurgle dragon. And Franz goes, I suppose I did say anybody, and kind of like reluctantly goes to fight it, gets his ass thoroughly handed to him, and falls from the sky like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of feet to the ground, and he dies. And you're like, wow, Franz is dead. That sucks. The Empire watches their Emperor die. Their lines are overwhelmed by Nurgle, and an army of undead just shows up to watch the Empire lose. They throw themselves into the fight briefly, and then they fall back. Vlad von Carstein, I don't know how he got into the sky. Like, there are various flying mounts that he could ride on. But at one point, he's on the ground. And then at the next point, it's like, there's a thundercloud heading towards the battlefield. Harkon of the Blood Dragons, the Nurgle vampire, sees it coming and accepts the challenge. He flies into the thundercloud, and then Vlad just bodies his ass and rides out on the Nurgle dragon. And I'm like, did he ride like a Vargeist up there? Did he ride a Terrorgeist up? How did he get into the cloud? Like, it's not impossible. It was just weird. And because I know I'm not explaining this well, but if he's already on a flying monster, what was the point of the cloud, right? Because he's on the ground. You see him on the ground, and then all of a sudden he's in a cloud. But how did he get there? And if he had to take a flying vehicle to get into a cloud, why didn't he just take the flying vehicle to the monster? How can a cloud move faster than the monster you're on? Or are you just sitting on the monster in the cloud? In which case, what's the cloud for? Are you worried about Nurgle cannons shooting you down? Oh. What was the point of the cloud? Whatever. So he kills the guy that killed Franz, and he's like, a shame, and goes away. So that's the setup of the book. The Empire is their army is completely slaughtered in the north and routed to the winds. Most of their heroes are scattered, and then the Nurgle army from there goes straight for Altdorf. So big bad times. That's like the setup to this book. But it is good. It's a good battle. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I got 75% of the way through this book, really enjoying it. So battle was good. I liked it. So then, the story goes and splinters a whole bunch, and every chapter has 2 mini chapters in it of different people's perspectives. Like, oh, this time it's going to be about the Glotkin and Lewin, and then this one's going to be about Lewin and Vlad, and this one's going to be Vlad and the Glotkin, and this one's going to be Kurt Helborg and the Glotkin. Like, we're just going to do each story's approach to Altdorf. So in Altdorf, Kurt Helborg rides as hard as he can to get back to the city with the remnants of the army, but it's like honestly 1/100th of the army that went north, because those that didn't die scattered. So it's just kind of the ones that happened to be around Helborg go to Altdorf. So he gets into Altdorf, and he kind of rallies the city around what he can, but they took most of the soldiers north, and it's not like the rest of the Empire is doing particularly well. So it's all going to shit. And then these magical forests start showing up around Altdorf as Nurgle corruption makes these weird disease forests around. And Helborg sends out some messengers to try and get random garrisons to come back, but none of the messengers make it, and the garrisons are left alone. So he's left isolated, and the trees put off this weird mist, and the mist kind of coalesces onto multiple things. The River Reich that Reichland is built along, the River Reich gets choked up by seaweed and moss, so the river stops flowing and fresh water can't get into the city. The mortar of the walls is decaying. Like every day they have to slap new mortar on it or the walls will just fall down. The wood is rotting. And then there's this rain that keeps coming in that's like slime rain. So roofs are caving in as over days slime is building up on top of these things, and they can't withstand that kind of weight. If you've ever held any container that holds liquid, you know it's pretty heavy, volume-wise. So an entire roof just getting coated in slime that's like probably made out of like thatch. It's coming down. It's not great. So Altdorf is besieged by just the concept of weather. And meanwhile, Kurt Helborg's trying to rally the defenders. He has Zintler from Zintler's Reichsguard with him for most of the book. And man, Zintler is a badass. Like, there's not a lot to say about him. He's pretty easy to define. He's just like the perfect lieutenant. Always yes sir that and yes sir this. Indefatigable. Always ready to do more work for the good of the Empire. Zintler's great. Helborg's kind of an asshat, but he gets done when he's get done. And another character in the city is Martark. He is the new Supreme Patriarch now that Gelt got axed somewhere from the thing. And real lore people know what happened. I get the gist of what happened. I know somehow, somewhere he turned to necromancy for some reason, and that like discredited him, and then his wall of faith fell, and that's why Chaos could get through. But that was all before this book. But after the return of Nagash, which again, I'm just reading the omnibuses, so I'm like, all right, where was that information? And it's probably in some vague white dwarf somewhere that I can't possibly get in the year 2024. So I guess that information just lost to me. But Gelt's not the Supreme Patriarch anymore, and it's this Martark guy. And this book is really doing a pretty decent job of showing the Empire's internal corruption. So the Order of Beasts, you know, the spell of beasts, Flock of Doom, Manticore Summon, all that. The Order of the Beast Mages is the worst of them all, and everyone thinks they're the weakest. And after Gelt had a falling out, the two main colleges are Gold and the Bright College, the Lords of Metal and Fire. Well, the Bright College was the Supreme Patriarch before Gelt. Gelt beat their leader fairly, and he became Supreme Patriarch. And then Gelt turned to necromancy, so he got discredited. So then the colleges were like, well, what do? The obvious answer is give it to the Bright College. Just give it to them. But that would seem a little corrupt, because they lost it, and then all of a sudden there's accusations of Gelt doing necromancy, and all of a sudden the Bright College is like, well, I'll just take this back without winning it. So the Bright College didn't want to be in charge because it would look bad. The Celestial College has no interest in governing. They just want to look at pretty stars all day, and on and on and on. So it was decided politically that it should be the Beasts College that gets the Supreme Patriarch because they're the weakest, and no one would think that it was a power grab because they're too pathetic to grab power. Well, that also just leaves you with a really pathetic Supreme Patriarch. Like, so Martek he's still a mage, he's still powerful, but as far as mages go, he's kind of garbage. And it's really funny in this book, because it didn't do this one intentionally. This is where I'll kind of poo-poo it a little bit. When it introduces Martok, after that introduction, he goes, but everybody doubts the power of the lore of beasts. And then this guy just fucking sucks at everything. Like, I don't know what his little, they'll all soon see the power of beasts inner monologue was about, because he's just talking to himself. Like, dude, if you suck, just admit you suck to yourself. Whatever. So he's like this guy who wears barely any clothes and is really ragged and hairy and smells gross. He wanders around the palace just being a cantankerous dick all the time. So that's what Kurt Helborg has to work with, is Zintler, who's great, a diminished Reichland force, the walls are literally crumbling around him, and the Supreme Patriarch was a politically chosen Neanderthal who's just wandering around, shitting in hallways, and complaining. And it's like, okay, well, at least he'll be a powerful magister later. Or not. But whatever. So Helborg is rallying the city, he's training some men, he's doing his best to keep the city alive, and oh yeah, there's weird green gas coming out of the sewers, which to me goes, yeah, check that out, but they don't want to. Because Festus, the Leech Lord, is beneath the city, stirring up a mystery cauldron of mystery, and he's like, I hope nobody finds me right now. And that wizard Martok guy goes to the Sisters of Shalia, and he's like, hey, why is everybody sick, and does it have anything to do with this weird smelling green mist? And she goes, yeah, it's the weird smelling green mist. Can you go down to the sewers and figure that out? And he's like, nah. Yeah, okay. So he goes back to Kurt Helborg. He's like, hey, can I have 100 dudes to go into the sewer? And Kurt Helborg's like, where the fuck am I going to get 100 guys? Like, the walls are literally falling down. Everybody's working 23-hour shifts. Like, where am I going to find 100 guys to help you on this farce? No, get out of my house. And Marta goes, okay, and goes back to the sister, and he's like, yeah, Kurt said no. And the sister's like, okay, but there's still something very evil down there that we should probably deal with. And Martok's like, best I can do is tell you Karl Franz is coming back. Okay. And then he goes back to Kurt Helborg. He's like, hey, Kurt, anything you want me to do? And Kurt's like, yeah, get out of my face. He's like, okay. And goes back to his opulent Supreme Patriarch room. He tears it apart with his bare hands in a fit of bestial rage. He's like, you know what? Fuck this! I miss the forest! So he goes down to the menagerie, the Imperial menagerie that has all sorts of beasts. He finds a griffin, and this is the Supreme Patriarch of the lore of beasts. And he walks up to a griffin, and he imposes his will on it in the language of beasts, and he says, you will serve me. And the griffin says no for like 15 minutes. And then the Imperial Guard catch up with him because he's trying to steal a griffin. And he's like, all right, listen, I know I can't control you, but I can break you out of here if you take me with you. And the griffin's like, all right, bet. So he lets him go. The griffin and him go flying into the sky, and they escape the Empire while he goes looking for Franz. And the griffin goes, two questions. One, do you know Franz is out there? And Martok's like, I had a dream, maybe. And the griffin's like, what was the dream? The dream was Karl Franz dying in Altdorf. So to die in Altdorf, he has to make it to Altdorf. The griffin's like, dude, your dreams suck ass. Also, get off. And the griffin starts like trying to dip him like in the air, just trying to drop the Supreme Patriarch. And Martok's like, no, please don't. No. Don't drop me. So the greatest wizard of the Beast College can barely convince a griffin to not kill him. Oh, joy. Yeah, the Beast College is definitely turning out to be the worst. But don't worry, guys. There's a secret hidden power of beasts, according to Martok. So that's the end of Altdorf for now. Like, we'll come back to it. Elsewhere, Vlad von Carstein. God, I might want to save him for last, but I already said his name, so here we go. Vlad von Carstein's in Sylvania, and he's like, I need to do something. Nope, that's a cliffhanger. Yep, okay. The structure's gonna be way better this way. Sucks to be you. So just know Vlad's over there stroking his ring. Meanwhile, in Marienburg, the Glotkin. What are their frickin' names? It's Otto something, isn't it? Otto, Eric, and Grunk? Or something. Martok. Do your research before you start the video. No. I finished the book on my lunch break at work, and then I skittered home, and I have a stream tonight, so I needed to go as fast as possible to get home and start this. So you're just gonna listen to me ramble while I find the fucking names. Okay, Otto, Gurk, and Ettrick, whatever. Otto's a big fat guy full of pestilence and disease and boils, and he wields a scythe, and he's pretty good at slashing people. Ethric is the same exact thing, but with a skull staff, and he's a mage boy. And Grunk is a literal giant. Like, take a giant from Total Warhammer, give it Rogue Idol style proportions, right? So it's thicker than it is tall, right? That's a living thing. And then it has one Chaos Spawn tentacle for an arm, but otherwise it's just a big guy. I guess one of his feet's hooves, but whatever. So one's gigantic, one's a mage, one's a scythe guy. They took out Marienburg, and they're like, hey, let's get to Altdorf so we can meet up with Epidemius and then Sumdick. And again, lore nerds are going to be like, oh, Sumdick's name was this. I don't remember, and I'm not going to push through the book again because he literally never comes up again. Like, there are 3 great armies descending upon Altdorf. Epidemius gets mentioned a lot, but you never see him. And the other guy gets mentioned once or twice, and you never see him either. It's all about the fucking Glotkin. But just know those other armies exist. The Glotkin are like, hey, we took Marienburg, we gotta take our Norskins and our Nurgle demons, and we gotta push through Karlberg to get to Altdorf and siege the city. And they keep saying, oh, my brother, several times, and it's really obnoxious. And then the mage guy is like, I see the twin-tailed comet. And Otto's like, it's not a big deal. Foreshadowing. But whatever. They just kind of rampage through the countryside. They have no issues. The Glotkin are generally kind of badass. Kind of. They suffer the issue of never running into any struggles, so I have no idea what their power level is. Like, if you ask me how the Glotkin would stand up against Luther Harkon, I'd have no idea. Because the stuff they fight is just so pitifully bad. Like, Gurk had to kill 3 swordsmen by stepping on them. And I'm like, oh, okay. That doesn't really show me anything. Like, they never struggle. They just roll through to Altdorf. So that's a pretty short subplot. There's a lot of pages dedicated to it, but nothing happens. It's just them getting closer and closer to Altdorf. That's about it. So then you go down to Bretonia. Lewin is really depressed because apparently in between these books, Gilles the Breton came back as the Green Knight, and he's like, I'm king of Bretonia now. And Lewin's like, that's my job. I want to be king. And Gilles the Breton is like, dude, that's cute, but like, I'm the fucking Green Knight, so maybe get out of my seat, give me that crown, get the fuck out. And Lewin's like, okay, can I at least still be the Lord of Caron? And Gilles is like, no, that's my capital. Get the fuck out. He's like, oh, okay. So Lewin's really sad, and he goes and finds the lady, and the lady gives him a back rub, and it's like, hey, buddy, I need you to, like, die. And Lewin's like, I don't want, what? Oh, my lady, you know I would die for you any day. But why? And she's like, hey, go to Altdorf and die. I need you to do that. And he's like, Altdorf is stinky, and the Empire did not help Bretonia. Why should I help them? And she's like, hey, quit being a little bitch. Go to Altdorf. And I was like, okay. So the lady goes to Gilles Le Breton, and this part's just kind of weird and funny, but weird. She goes to Gilles and she's like, hey, let Lewin make a speech, and any knight that desires to follow him to Altdorf should go. And Gilles is like kind of uncomfortable with it, but allows it. And Lewin hosts this giant rally and takes like most of the knights of Bretonia with him, and the largest army that's gathered in like forever. And they all follow him out to ride for glory and to save the world. But you can tell, like, the book kind of mentions it a little bit, but Gilles of Breton is just standing on the walls of Caron like, dude, what the fuck? Like, you're taking the whole army. The world's falling apart. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's beastmen everywhere. There's greenskins everywhere. There's Northskins everywhere. Like, Lewin's ride to go talk to Lady and get back to Caron, he mentioned seeing beastmen hordes, like, raising towns. And at this time, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna steal your army, bro. And she's just like, what the fuck? And the Lady Lake's like, it's cool, let it happen, let it happen. And Shields is like, what do I defend Bretonia with? You took everyone. So that's not their problem. They nope out of there. Lewin leads them up into the mountains. It gets really icy. Like half their horses die on the way up the mountain because it's icy. And they run into greenskins who are running away from this giant Nurgle forest. And Lewin's like, hey guys, I think those greenskins are scared of something. And the rest of his knights are like, nah, it's just a forest. And then they get to the forest and it's all Nurgly and they go, never mind, I'm going home. So Lewin's all sad and stuff because he can't get through the forest. He's not going to get to Altdorf on time. So he kneels by a river that's slightly clear. All the rest is Nurgly. But he's like, hey, this water's not Nurgly. The lady's probably in there. So he goes over and the lady Lake's like, you want to go home, bro? And he goes, what? And she's like, you want to go home, bro? Like, we could kiss. And he's like, okay, I'm so confused. One, you sent me here. Two, like, what's all this about, like, kissing? And I'm saying kissing for YouTube, so I don't get demonetized, but read into that what you will. And she's like, you know, like, maybe you and I should just go into a field and, like, smooch until the world comes to an end. Wouldn't that be kind of cool? You're hot, I'm hot. Like, why don't we just go do that? That'd be fun. And Lewin's like, listen, you gotta get a lot clearer, a lot quicker, because I brought an entire army into the middle of nowhere and now you're playing games. And she's like, it's a test to see if you really mean what you said. Will you die for me? And Lewin's like, yes, see, yeah, that's a lot more clear than whatever the fuck you were talking about earlier. Yeah, I'd like to go quest to die, please. Gilles Le Breton stole my kingdom and now you're playing mind games with me. I really don't want to be here anymore. So the lady goes, all right, and sends a river straight through the forest, and wherever the river goes, all the Nurgle trees die. So the knights ride along the river straight to Altdorf. And they'll get there just as the siege starts. So the final person to get to Altdorf on time is Vlad von Carstein. Now, why did I save him for last? Well, the Glotkin kind of play into his thing, and I forgot that. So Vlad rallies forces around Sylvania, and he gets this witch hunter, who I don't remember his name, but it doesn't matter. So he gets Jimmy the witch hunter, And this witch hunter was like courageous enough to stand up to him to the last, and he's like, I value courage, men with courage, and it is a shame I have to turn you to undeath, but I will give you the best undeath life. And he turns him into a vampire. Now, I remind you, he turns him into a vampire. A vampire, not a white king. You said that a lot. Is that foreshadowing? Yeah, I have a thing to bitch about later. So this witch hunter's a vampire. He's upset about that, but Vlad says, shut up and get on the boat. He raises all of the dead in Sylvania, brings all of the citizens out of Sylvania. So he's leaving Sylvania with like literally a population of maybe 100 people. Everything else he takes with him. Gets on some boats, rides up the river. Every town he comes across up the river, he slaughters them without mercy and converts anyone with courage to a vampire to serve in his army. Like he takes a Sigmarite priest, which he's even less important than the witch hunters. I'm not going to mention him. But the book makes a big deal of Vlad building up this cadre of bros and a bunch of undead, like a redonkulous amount of undead. Well, there are reports at Marienburg, where the Glotkin won, that the undead were seen mysteriously fighting against the forces of chaos. And Vlad goes, hey, I have a guy up there. His name was like Mardvark or Mudvayne or Mustache. He also doesn't matter, so I'm not going to bother learning his name. Well, he failed me. Have him meet me at this place. And these three like women go, sure, and then get on the vampire version of a fucking telephone and tell this guy to meet him at Altdorf. Okay. So Vlad sails upriver, and then he comes across the Glotkin's weird fucked up forest. It's blocking the whole river, and the witch hunter's like, Big Daddy Vladdy, we can't get through. And Vlad's like, watch this, bitch. And he unleashes the wind of Shaiish, the death wind? No, it's not Shaiish. It's the wind of death, like the actual wind of death. But Shaiish is also death. It's the wind of undeath. Fuck it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He is the wind of undeath. Whatever. He points out his hand with his ring, and all the trees shrivel in front of him, and he's like, I could do this for miles. And he does it for hundreds of miles in a straight line. Okay, so Vlad's a big badass. And he could fly up to a storm cloud or whatever. I don't know. Vlad's unstoppable in this book. You know, the last book I was saying Arkin was strangely powerful? Yeah, Vlad's making Arkin look like a little bitch. It'll be important later. Vlad sent a letter ahead of him to Altdorf to Kurt Helborg saying, hey bro, I can help you save your empire if you give me Sylvania. Helborg initially thinks no, but he doesn't send a letter back because he doesn't know how to. A letter just got dropped to him from a severed hand, so he's like, I don't know how to, what's the return address on this shit? But whatever. So Vlad shows up at the siege of Altdorf right around the time the Bretonnians do, right about the time the Nurglings do, and Kurt's already there, I suppose. Festus finishes his little summoning right around the time the armies show up, and a giant motherfucking green tornado rips through the center of Altdorf. The slime rain increases to like a slime hurricane, and more buildings are collapsing. Hell, even the Altdorf like palace is collapsing from how much slime is building up on its walls and stuff. And that's not good. And then Kurt Helborg goes, when the Supreme Patriarch told me something about something in the sewers, I ignored him, and I now am reaping the folly of my actions. And I guess that's true. And the tornado just turns into a giant, take Pit of Shades, you know the spell Pit of Shades, turn it green, turn it the size of a city, and then throw demons out of it. Now here's one part I'm confused about, is the demons are flying out of this portal up in the sky, and they are landing in Altdorf with what is described as splats and thunks. So they have some pretty significant speed to them. How are they surviving impact? Whatever. So, like, Nurglings and Plague Bearers and shit are just falling out of the sky into Altdorf, making an already pretty bad situation straight up untenable. Kurt Helborg sends back some mages to try and deal with them, and then the attack on the walls begins from the three giant armies, and the Glotkin says, hey, over there, it's Epidemius, and Epidemius stays off screen because they didn't want to pay for casting, I guess. So you just trust that he's over there, I suppose. And the Glotkin charge the walls. Bretonia comes in just at that moment from behind the armies and leads a massive charge into their butts. So Bretonia is fighting them outside the walls. Kurt Helborg is fighting them on the walls and then in the city. Vlad is just arriving, so he's not quite there yet. And Kugoth Plaguefather shows up out of Festus the Leech Lord's cauldron. Now, Festus's cauldron was described as moderately sized, and then even the book goes, yeah, there's no way Kugoth could fit in there, but here he comes. He, like, sticks one ear out at a time, and then, like, an antler, then another one, then, like, a pinky, which I guess it was weird, but yeah, Festus goes, Kugoth's here, and Kugoth is walking, which I didn't know he could do. But he walks around, he just keeps saying, I'm hungry, and Festus is like, oh yes, it's so good to see you. I'm hungry. You're so cool and talented. I'm hungry. All right, let's get you some food. I'm hungry. And that was a scene that happened that I was like, oh, okay. that was a page and a half of my life that I'll never get back. It was pretty bad. But we moved on. So Kugath and Festus come up and they start fighting in the middle of the city, yada, 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 yada. Do I deal with Lewin or do I deal with Kurt? Let's deal with Lewin. No, Kurt. Fuck it. Okay, so Kurt realizes the walls are going to be lost. He saved some super elite troops, plus, of course, his Reichsguard. So he hops down from the walls, takes his Entler with him, and they lead a mass cavalry charge out the gates, bait Nurgle's forces into a bad spot, and then blow him apart with cannons while state troops hold him down. So it's a pretty cool plan. He kills like several thousand guys, and it's just a drop in the bucket, and he gets really depressed. While he's really depressed, he's outside of Altdorf trying to rear charge the enemy, and Vlad von Carstein shows up and he uses his vampire phone, and he's like, hey, you got my letter? And Kurt goes, yeah, I got your letters. And they have a little meeting, and Kurt's like, I want to stab you. And Vlad's like, sucks to suck, nerd. I brought an army, and I can save your pathetic city as long as you allow me to exist. And I will allow you to exist, and then we're all going to exist until Nagash stops existence. And Kurt, confused, strokes his mustache and goes, all right, bet. So Vlad sends his giant army into the city, and they start massacring demons, and then it looks like it's going well. So hey, it's going well! The army of undead is actually pretty close to a number with the Nurgle army. So you have chaff now. The Empire still has better troops than Nurgle, so you have skill and cavalry, and things are going well. Yay! Meanwhile, Martok actually found Karl Franz in the north because Karl Franz woke up in a field after falling hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of feet. He just fell. He's fine. He wakes up. He's like, what the fuck? So he wanders around for a while, and then he finds Deathclaw with a group of Norskins, but like 4 Norskins? Like, what? That is extremely contrived. That is video game tutorials level of contrived to have 4 Norskins just like guarding fucking Deathclaw. So Franz breaks Deathclaw out, kills all those guys. Deathclaw's wings are broken, so he can't fly. So they wander the countryside for a couple days. A couple days? Yeah, it's hard to tell this story without jumping all over the place, dude. So he and Deathclaw wander for a couple days until Martok, the beast's supreme patriarch, comes out of the sky on his griffin, who unceremoniously dumps him next to Franz. He's like, Franz, I found you! And Franz is like, you found me, whoever the fuck you are. He's like, I'm the supreme patriarch! And Franz like literally says something along the lines of, dear God. Why the fuck are you the supreme patriarch? And he's like, I don't know. So Martok says, I can fix Deathwing, and I, as a casual Total War gamer, I'm like, I thought that was life magic, but sure. So unexplained how he Lore of Beasts Deathwing back to health, and then they both fly. And Martok's griffin respects Franz more than Martok, but he's like, whatever, just fly with me. Okay, that's fine. So then they fly day and night. Franz sees the twin-tailed comet in the sky, goes, it's a sign! And he goes to Altdorf, like a super Chad. So they're on their way. They're trying to help out. Meanwhile, Kurt let Vlad into the city, and Vlad's killing some stuff. So it's like, man, things are looking up. Franz is on his way. Lewin's here rear charging these motherfuckers. The undead are providing chat. Everything's going really good. And then Lewin is picking off a bunch of people. He's crushing it. All of his Bretonnians are doing great. And then he sees Kugath Plaguefather wandering through the city. He goes, that's probably not great. So he dives down just as it's about to break into the Shalian temple. He dives down on top of him with Beaky. Oh, yeah! Hold on. Sorry. This is just a funny anecdote. It's not like a plot thing. But Beaky is hilarious. So Lewin, when he was gathering all the troops in Bretonnia, was just riding around on a fucking horse. And then at one point, they're getting into the mountains, and he goes like, we're waiting for reinforcements here. And Beaky shows up with like 20-ish Pegasus. But not Pegasus riders, like just Pegasus. And then throughout the whole march, like through the river and all that stuff that we talked about, Beaky is occasionally mentioned, but just like corralling and bullying the Pegasus into continuing with the army. And it's just like really funny. It's just Beaky is beating up some Pegasus, like, you stay in line, motherfucker. So anyway, Lewin and his Pegasus Knights now, because Beaky bullied those horses into letting people ride them. They fly down to the city. They see Kugath Plaguefather Byakhee gets a drop on him, claws out his eyes and stuff, and Lewin's like lancing him and stabbing him and all this stuff, and Kugath's like, please stop. So he grabs Byakhee and chucks against the wall, breaking his neck. And that was quick. So Byakhee's toast. Kugath is bleeding real bad. And Lewin stands up. He's like, I'm going to finish the job. And Kugath's like, I'm still a greater demon. And Lewin stops and vomits a few times. So then the sister of Shalia that we've been following ever so often, the one that told Martok to look in the sewers, chucks holy water to him. And she's like, take this, strange speaking knight. So Lewin grabs this pot of holy water, splashes it in Kugath's face, a giant amount of steam erupts, and while the steam is there, Lewin jumps on him and stabs his heart and pulls it out of his chest and is like, I am the barbarian, and eats it. Everything but that last part actually happened. So then Kugath goes, no, and he fades back into the ether doing very little. I guess he killed Byakhee, but that was it. So Lewin's feeling like a badass. There's still a bunch of demons everywhere, and things are not going well when Festus waddles up. He's like, you killed my friend? No. And he just bodies Lewin, actually, kind of. Like, I don't know. Lewin disembowels him like 2 or 3 times, just keeps tearing his organs out, and Festus is like, whatever, and keeps swinging. So eventually Lewin gets hit and actually dies because he can't just let his organs fall out, which is, I guess, a thing that Festus can do. I don't know. So then Festus is like, I'm the best and the biggest and the bestest. And then Vlad stabs him from behind and goes, I'm the bestest. So Festus dies to Vlad, Lewin dies to Festus, and Vlad looks at Lewin. He's like, if there was more time, I would turn you into a vampire, but fuck you, idiot, and leaves. Okay, that was a lot to happen. So there's 4 legendary lords involved in a fight, and only Vlad lived. Got it? Got it. What else happened? This is just it's like one long battle. Crap. Losing momentum. What happened? Okay, Vlad's there. Lewin's dead. Bretonnians are dead at this point. Franz is on his way in, but he's not here yet. What am I missing? Oh yeah, Helborg. So Kurt Helborg's trying to rally some troops. He keeps mysteriously saying that he's got to get to the river in the center of Altdorf. I'm like, what, is he going to flee to Middenheim, which is still alive? Maybe? I don't know. He's got to get to the river, apparently. Well, he gets kind of to the river, and then he looks up, and he sees Karl Franz flying in towards the Imperial capital. And he's like, is that Karl Franz? We gotta go! And he runs towards it. Now Vlad's running toward it. The Glotkin are running towards it. Everybody is trying to get to the capital where apparently the deed must be done. And Vlad von Carstein is raising a bunch of undead to man the walls, and it's getting really hard for the Nurgle force to get in. And the book keeps implying that Nurgle might actually lose this, so it's actually really, really close right now. The battle's on a knife's edge. And this is where the book gets bad. So up until this point, this is the part I've been enjoying. This is 75% of the book that's been pretty fine. Disaster starts. Disaster in writing disaster, not disaster in like, oh, this was planned out. Like, just, no, fucking garbage, horseshit ass writing. So the Glotkin make their way into the Capitol building, and they meet up with the Mudvayne. Mundrark? Maldabad? Doesn't matter, because they just instantly get his ass, and there was no point to bringing him into the story. He gets bodied right away. So they get through, and they're still pushing on to the end. Now, Vlad and his witch hunter friend and his other cadre, he's been building up these people through the whole book, so you think they're going to be important, which is, you know, spoilers, but I haven't been using their names because they're not. So he has this vampire witch hunter he brought with him. He's like, watch now, as a Mortrak shows you how he devours his prey. And it's like this big epic moment, and like the music surging and stuff, like it's, oh, okay, he's gonna go be a badass. Now I know Altdorf falls, so I'm curious how he loses this, but whatever. The Glotkin come piling in, and Vlad is super cocky. He's like, come at me, you stupid fuck. So Otto, the Glotkin, the scythe that's really fast and stuff, starts to fight with Vlad, and Vlad is completely dominating his ass. It's not even close, and the fight is super short. Vlad impales him through the chest, knocks him on the ground, kicks his scythe away, and it's just like, ha, who's your daddy now? It's Vladdy. And then, like, this, I can't describe, I need to be very careful, because I can see the rebuttals already. It was an accident. It was not an accident. It was carefully thought out. So Vlad, normally, when he kills someone, he licks their blood off of his sword, just out of like habit. So he stops. He looks at this frothing green and black blood on his sword. He looks at it, he considers it, and then he licks it. What from the Glotkin? He's more pus than man. That's black and green and frothing. Why would you lick that? What? And then Vlad fucking dies. He just fucking dies, man. What the hell? Now, some astute viewers who have read the book will be like, no, he didn't die. He barely survived. He turned into a cloud of bats and had to flee the battlefield. Yeah, he essentially died. And anything that was created by Vlad also dies, including the vampiric witch hunter, who just falls apart right next to him after mourning his master. Like, his skin falls off, and then his bones disintegrate into nothingness. Like, he's just gone. So Vlad had this battle completely won. He was super cocky, like all this stuff, and then he just fucking dies. And you might be like, yeah, that could be realistic. I could see it. Like, bro, I can see it, but that doesn't make it a good ending to the fucking story. Like, oh, Tony Stark from Iron Man is super overconfident and rich, and he likes to make shitty jokes. And at the end of an hour-and-a-half long movie, he goes, I'm going to take my helmet off and give a speech. And he's like, yeah, well, I'm Iron Man. I do funny jokes and quips that I can't think of right now because I'm just a guy ranting about a video. Ha ha ha. And then the other guy just shoots him in the fucking head and he dies, and the credits start rolling. You'd be like, that's a dumb ending. And then people are like, well, he's Tony Stark. He can be cocky, confident. Yeah, dude, still a shitty ending to a movie. So Vlad just licks pure Nurgle corruption off of his sword and fucking dies. Why? And then Otto stands up like, all part of my plan. And I'm like, what do you mean all part of your fucking plan? Your plan was to get your ass kicked for like 4 lines of dialogue before you're nearly dead, and then your opponent just commits suicide for no reason? How is that a plan? I don't give a shit about these villains because they didn't do anything. Our protagonist, Vlad, just killed himself. The villain doesn't matter. You could have written Vlad walked into the palace and cut his own head off for no fucking reason, and the story would have been the exact same because your villain had no agency in how he died. You just undercut your villain. Otto of the Glotkin is neither a good fighter or a good strategist. Vlad just killed himself. It's stupid. It was so stupid. Now the follow-up, I kept mentioning that the witch hunter is a vampire, and he disintegrated when Vlad died. So either it's all garbage. None of this makes any sense. Like, let's pretend Vlad died for legitimate reasons. That's not even what I'm complaining about now. Just pretend he died for normal reasons. Vlad dies and the witch hunter dies too because he's a vampire Vlad sired. So, one, what was the point of the fake out if Vlad disintegrated into bats and flew away? If he did that, that implies he's alive, but then all of his creations die. So that, is he dead? Or did he lose control over them because he took too much internal damage from the Nurgle corruption, and now he can't control himself, fall apart? But the witch hunter wasn't a zombie, he's a vampire. So does Vlad need to be alive for vampires to be alive? Now, clearly not, because Vlad's been dead for Check's notes about 1,000 fucking years, and Manfred's still running around like a dickhead. Some of Isabella's old court are still running around. Like, other vampires are also Vlad's. So it doesn't make any sense that, like, why did this vampire witch hunter disintegrate? Is Manfred dead? Was Manfred over in, I don't know where the hell he is right now, but Astalia? Did he just disintegrate into nothingness for reasons he knows not? I doubt it. And since Vlad is like the original vampire, one of the originals, did a quarter of the vampire population of the world just disintegrate? No. And I know that's not true because I have some notion of what happens in the next books, and Manfred's around. So, like, why did the witch hunter die? And Vlad's not even dead. And if Vlad is dead, then what was the point of the cloud of bats and shit? And plus, I know Vlad's not dead because of a Gotrek and Felix story later where Vlad shows up with Ulrika, but, like, I don't know. This whole thing, like, this whole Vlad sequence was just a complete disaster of storytelling and world building and reasoning. It was awful. It was a very short amount of pages. It was like a page and a half where this all happened, but it was a complete disaster. I had to stop reading it, just stare at the page like, what the fuck? And the crazy part is you don't even have to reread it to see if you misread it because it's such a short amount of text that it's like, no, it's right there. I don't have to go back multiple chapters and see if I missed some hidden thing. No, it's all on this literal page. I can see the complete downfall of this story. So that's objectively stupid. So now the undead army is entirely gone, and Altdorf is completely fucked. Karl Franz and Martok land in the Altar of Sigmar room, where the Warhammer used to be killed. But she doesn't have Galmaraz, is with Volton, wherever Volton is. So he just has the Reikland Runefang. And the Glotkin show up to fight him with a big old Chaos Horde. And Martok gets off his Griffin, and Martok's like, we should leave. And Franz is like, nah, dude. So then, Ifrof, I don't know. The Glotkin mage starts fighting with Martok, and Martok gets his ass thoroughly kicked. He throws out some chevrons, like, you know, just arrowhead-looking magic things, and it gets blocked. And then he throws out a Flock of Doom, and it gets blocked. And then his arm turns into buboes, and he has to run for his life. So, wow, guys. Like, I know characters can be flawed, and his little speech to himself about, like, the hidden power of the lore of beasts, but there was no payoff. This dude's hidden power of the lore of beasts was barely controlling a griffin and casting Flock of Doom, like, once. Oh, wow. Yeah, the lore of beasts is so underappreciated, Martok, you fucking dunce. Whatever. He flees the scene, he goes to the Imperial Menagerie to get a dragon. That doesn't work, but it doesn't matter for the rest of the story. So just know that he fled, and Franz is fighting alone. Franz fights Otto, like Vlad did before him, and he loses. And he gets stabbed in the arm, and he's leaning against the altar of Sigmar, and he's like, I have to die here. Sigmar told me. Then, okay, I suspect something stupid's gonna happen, but sure, it can only be mildly stupid. The book is called The Fall of Altdorf, so I know Franz loses here. Whatever. Kurt Helborg shows up at the last second. He's like, I brought some Reichsguard, and then they all get fucking murdered. Like, okay, I mean, damn. So Franz watches them all die, and he's like, whatever. Otto shows up and stabs him through the chest. He's like, oh god, I die for my country! And he dies on the altar of Sigmar, and the Glotkin briefly celebrate, like, yay, we did it, we're so good. And then the light of heaven shines down, and Karl Franz's body grows in size, and it grows and grows into a tornado of light, and now light is shining down on all of Altdorf, and Franz turns into a million faces, and it says it's all the emperors that have ever been the emperor of the Empire of Man. It says the emperor is the empire, and then the Glotkin die, and the entire Chaos Horde dies in a dome of white light that expands out from Franz's body to cover the entire Reikland Valley, not just Altdorf, the entire Reikland Valley expands out. All of the Nurgle forests are dead, all the rivers are cleared, all the armies of chaos are destroyed, everything is gone, and Altdorf is saved, but it is a ruin. Down in the menagerie, Martok was going to let the dragon out, but then Franz just Goku'd everything and everybody died. So the Glotkin all died because they killed Franz, and all the armies are dead because reasons. So in the fall of Altdorf, Altdorf did not fall. The humans won, but not due to their own strength or ingenuity, just due to fuckery. The undead were trying to help and then didn't because their leader committed suicide for no reason. And yeah, that was a disaster. That was a disaster. I don't know who could have possibly thought the resolution everybody was waiting for after all this long struggle in a giant battle was Franz dies, but it's okay because he's a thermonuclear warhead that only affects the bad guys, and all the good guys are safe and happy, and they all get a muffin and a donut, and then they get new houses and all the money, and then they're all pretty. What the fuck kind of ending was that? Like, just, you're all safe now. It's whatever. You're just fine. All the forests are fine. The Empire's fine. Everything's fine. That was really fucking dumb. That was really fucking dumb. That's how the Glotkin died, too. They won every battle, and they just died in a crazy white light. Holy. Thankfully, that's the end of the end times, right? Roar. Subscribe, yes, yes.